The Appalachian Mountains look like they never change. Drive through the Blue Ridge or the Smokies, and you see the same old ridges, the same green trees, and the same gray rocks. It feels like a landscape that settled down millions of years ago. People call them ancient for a reason, but that surface view hides a completely different reality. Deep underground, massive chunks of rock are peeling off. Rivers are cutting down faster than they should. Animals are glowing in the dark, moving up mountains and facing invisible traps. The whole system is actually moving, heating up and shifting right now. We are counting down the top 10 wildest hidden shifts and discoveries in the Appalachians. These aren't just fun facts. They are active forces reshaping the map while you drive over it. The list starts with a timing problem that is rewriting the calendar for the entire forest. Fact number 10. The spring timing mismatch. Spring looks like a single season. Flowers bloom, trees leaf out, and the woods turn green. It seems like a synchronized dance, but data from over 50,000 citizen science nodes shows the rhythm is breaking. For 20 years, hikers along the Appalachian Trail recorded when they saw the first blooms and the first leaves. The numbers reveal a hidden gap. Understory plants, the wildflowers on the forest floor, are shifting their schedule much faster than the trees above them. For every 1 degree Celsius of warming, those low plants bloom about 6 days earlier. The canopy trees only shift about 3 days earlier. That sounds like a small difference, but it creates a split system. The wildflowers are rushing ahead, the trees are lagging behind. This changes the light budget for the whole forest floor. Flowers get a longer window of sun before the leaves block the sky. That sounds like a bonus, but here's the thing. It opens the door to a mismatch with everything else. Insects like bees often time their emergence to match the flowers. If the flowers open a week early and the bees are late, the system desyncs. Pollination drops, seeds don't form. Then there is the frost risk. Early blooms means tender parts are exposed longer to late cold snaps. One freezing night can wipe out a season of work, so the penalty is thinking spring is just arriving sooner. The reality is that the forest floor is detaching from the canopy schedule, and it is still happening right now. Every spring, that gap gets tested again, changing who survives the season. Fact number 9. The elk return experiment. You can drive into the Great Smoky Mountains today and see a 700-pound elk grazing in a meadow. It looks perfectly natural. It looks like it has always been there. But that animal is actually a stand-in for a ghost. The original eastern elk were wiped out by overhunting around 1870. They were gone for over a century. The meadows they used to keep open started growing into brush. The park had the land, but the key mechanic was missing. So biologists tried a bold experiment. They didn't just open a gate, they airlifted elk into the backcountry. Starting in 2001, helicopters dropped crates into remote valleys like Cataloochee, but the project almost failed immediately. The source elk came from places without many bears. When the calves were born in the Smokies, the mothers didn't know how to hide them well enough. Black bears decimated the first rounds of calves. Models predicted the whole herd would crash. You cannot make this up. The project looked doomed, but then the animals did something wild. They learned. The cows started hiding their calves in thick, thorny brush instead of open grass. They started defending them more aggressively. Calf survival jumped, and the herd stabilized. Today, there are over 260 elk in the park, but here is the detail most people miss. These aren't the original subspecies. Those are extinct. These are Manitoban elk brought in from Kentucky and Canada. They are a genetic proxy, a close match doing the same job, so the reward is seeing those antlers and knowing what they represent. They are not just wildlife. They are a manufactured return that barely survived a bear war to stand there today. Fact number 8, the Salamander Diversity Factory. People think of the Amazon or the Congo as the capitals of biodiversity. But for salamanders, the global capital is right here in Appalachia. This single mountain chain holds about 77 different species. That is more than 10% of all salamander species on Earth. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park alone holds 30 types. That's insane density for a temperate forest. You can walk a single trail and pass through the territories of a dozen different lineages. But the reason for this explosion is hidden in the landscape itself. The mountains act like a species factory. Salamanders here don't travel far. Many of them lack lungs and breathe through their wet skin. That means they can't cross dry, hot ridges. They get stuck in moist valleys. Over millions of years, this rugged terrain split one population into 20. A group in one hollow gets separated from a group in the next hollow by a dry ridge. They stop breeding. They drift apart genetically. Eventually, they become different species that look almost exactly the same. Scientists call this a microhabitat mosaic. One slope holds a species that likes moss. The next creek holds a species that likes rocks. In some prime spots, the density reaches 2 salamanders per square foot. That means if you stand in the woods, you are statistically surrounding yourself with amphibians. And this process hasn't stopped. Genetic tools are still finding new cryptic species today. They look identical to the naked eye, but their DNA shows they haven't spoken to each other in a million years. Fact number 7, the patch-nosed genus. This entry proves how much is still hiding in these hills. In 2009, researchers didn't just find a new species. They found a whole new genus. That is a massive distinction. A species is like finding a new cousin. A genus is like finding a whole new branch of the family tree. The animal is called the patch-nosed salamander. It is tiny, about 2 inches long. It has a little yellow patch on its nose, which gives it the name. But the crazy part is where it lives. Its entire known world is a tiny strip of land near the Tougaloo River on the Georgia-South Carolina border. The range is estimated at about 15 square miles. That is smaller than most airports. For decades, scientists walked right past it. They missed it because it lives in the leaf litter and the larvae live in tiny headwater trickles that people usually ignore. It was the first new genus of 4-legged animal discovered in the United States since 1961. Think about that. We went to the moon, invented the internet, and mapped the human genome before we found this animal living in a creek in Georgia. The discovery used genetic markers to show it didn't fit any known group. It had 5 toes on its back feet, where others had 4. It was a relic lineage that had been sitting there the whole time. The reward is realizing the map isn't finished. If a 2-inch animal can hide a whole genus in a 15-mile patch, what else is buried under the leaves right now? Fact number 6, the hidden green glow. If you look at a southern gray-cheeked salamander in daylight, it looks boring. It is dark, grayish, and blends into the dirt. It looks like a shadow. But if you come back at night with a blue light, that shadow turns into a lantern. Recent research reveals that these animals are biofluorescent. When you hit their skin with blue light in the 440 nanometer range, they absorb it and shoot back bright green light. This isn't a faint shimmer. It is a body-wide neon green glow. For a long time, we thought this kind of trick was mostly for deep sea fish or coral reefs. Finding it in a mountain amphibian changes the whole story, and it gets stranger. The glow is different between males and females. Males show a stronger, more speckled glow, especially on their undersides. The speckling lines up with specific glands used for mating scents. This suggests the glow isn't an accident. It might be a signal. These animals have eyes with rod cells that are sensitive to green light. So in the dim moonlight of a forest, they might actually see each other as glowing shapes. The penalty is assuming nature is drab just because our eyes are weak. We see a gray lizard. They might see a glowing partner. And it is still happening right now. Every night, the forest floor lights up in a spectrum we completely miss unless we bring the right filters. Fact number 5, the wet and dry paradox. Climate models usually point in one direction. It gets hotter or it gets wetter. But for Appalachia, the projection for 2,050 points in two opposite directions at the same time, it creates a water paradox. The region is warming up about 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit by mid-century. That heat acts like a sponge. It pulls water out of the soil and plants faster than ever before, so the ground dries out quickly. This creates flash droughts. You can have a green garden one week and cracked earth the next. But here is the twist. The heat also charges up the storms. Warmer air holds more moisture. So when rain finally comes, it doesn't sprinkle. It dumps. Models suggest the northern Appalachians will get wetter overall, while the south gets drier. But everywhere in the middle gets hit by the whiplash. So you get too much water and too little water in the same season. This matters because of the terrain. Appalachia is steep. When an intense storm hits dry, hard-packed soil, the water doesn't soak in. It runs off. This triggers flash floods that tear out culverts and roads. Then, 3 weeks later, the streams are empty again because the heat sucked the moisture away. The stakes are huge for anyone living in a hollow. You have to plan for a flood and a drought in the same summer. It's not a distant theory. It is visible today in the way creek levels spike and crash faster than they used to. Fact number 4, the elevation trap mountains usually offer a safety escape. If the valley gets too hot, animals can just move uphill to find cool air. But in Appalachia, that escape route has a ceiling. Many mountains here top out around 5,000 or 6,000 feet. That sounds high, but for species adapted to the coldest, cloudiest peaks, it is barely enough. This creates an elevation trap. Take the Shenandoah salamander. It lives on just 3 mountain peaks. It needs cool, moist, rocky slopes. As the climate warms, the comfortable temperature zone moves up the mountain. The salamanders move up with it, but eventually they hit the summit. There is no higher ground. They cannot fly to the next mountain. They are stranded on an island in the sky that is slowly shrinking. It's not just salamanders. Birds that nest in high elevation spruce forests are seeing their habitats squeezed from below. The hardwood trees from the warm valleys are creeping upward, pushing the spruce trees off the top. The penalty is thinking these animals can just migrate north. They can't cross the hot, developed valleys in between. The reward is understanding the geometry of extinction. It's not always a sudden event. Sometimes it's just running out of up. Fact number 3. The Fire Det Drive, the Blue Ridge Parkway, and you see endless green. It looks like a wet, fireproof rainforest, but that green blanket is hiding a massive fuel bomb. For thousands of years, these mountains burned often. Native Americans and lightning started frequent, low-intensity fires. These fires cleared out the brush and dead leaves every few years. They kept the woods open, but starting in the 1930s, we stopped the fires. We put every spark out. That sounds safe, but it broke the cycle. For nearly a century, wood and leaves have been piling up. Saplings have grown into fuel ladders that connect the ground to the treetops. The forest is now fire-starved. It is packed with energy waiting to release. Models suggest that as droughts get hotter, this system could flip. Instead of the gentle ground fires of the past, we are setting the stage for high-intensity crown fires. These fires burn so hot they kill the old oaks and poplars. They spread fast across ridges, fueled by 90 years of accumulated debris. Even the wet coves, the deep, shady valleys are drying out enough to burn. The stakes are real. We are seeing it happen in recent massive wildfires that shock people who thought these wet mountains couldn't burn. The fire isn't gone. It's just been saving up. Fact number 2. The recent facelift geologists used to think the Appalachians were dead. They assumed the range stopped growing 200 million years ago and has just been wearing down ever since. By that logic, these mountains should be flat hills by now. Erosion should have erased them. But they are still high and rugged. And fact number 2 explains why. They got a facelift only 8 million years ago. The evidence is written in the rivers. If you look at river profiles in the southern Appalachians, you find something weird. They have sudden, steep steps called nick points. These look like waterfalls or rapids. They are actively cutting down into the bedrock. This means the land suddenly rose up relative to the rivers. The rivers are frantically trying to catch up by carving deeper gorges. Scientists call this rejuvenation. About 8 million years ago, which is yesterday in geologic time, something pushed the crust up. It more than doubled the relief in some areas. So when you stand on a sharp cliff or look down into a steep gorge, you aren't seeing ancient history. You are seeing a young, aggressive landscape cutting into old rock. The mountains are ancient in rock age, but young in shape. But what pushed them up? That leads us to the number 1 wildest discovery. Fact number 1, the magma blob. The biggest secret in Appalachia isn't on the surface. It is floating hundreds of miles beneath your tires. It is a massive blob of hot rock called the Northern Appalachian Anomaly. For a long time, nobody knew it was there. But seismic sensors, which measure how earthquake waves travel through the earth, found a zone where the waves slowed down. That means heat. There is a blob of hot mantle rock, about 200 miles wide, sitting under New England. And it is moving. Models show this blob peeled off the Earth's deep layer about 80 million years ago. It started near the Labrador Sea when the Atlantic Ocean was opening up. It has been slowly drifting southwest ever since. It moves about 12 miles every million years. Here is why that matters. Heat rises. This hot blob acts like a hot air balloon under the Earth's crust. It provides buoyant lift. It pushes the mountains up from below, fighting against erosion. This is why the Appalachians are still high. They have a hidden support system. The blob peels away heavy root rock and replaces it with hot, light magma that keeps the surface floating high. And it gets crazier. The blob is still moving. Models suggest it will pass under New York in about 10 million years. This changes everything. We used to think mountains were just piles of rock sitting still. Now we know the Appalachians are riding a slow-motion wave of deep heat. The mountains are alive, the ground is moving, and the story isn't over. So the next time you look at that ancient ridge line, remember what is really happening. The flowers are rushing, the animals are glowing, the water is swinging, and the earth itself is bubbling from below. The Appalachians aren't finished. They are just getting started.